This is Soul episode number 1, and the goal of what I want to do with these soul logs is every single night before I start my bedtime routine, essentially, this will be part of it, and I will come and do a short video log and talk about whatever's going on and just kind of log things, similar to how Jake Sully in Avatar sits down at the end of his day and talks about things that gone on in Pandora, or similar to how Mark Watney in the movie The Martian, he sits down and talks about his days, his souls on Mars all alone. This is going to be my version of that. And in saying that, those are two of my favorite movies, essentially. Two of my all-time favorite movies. And I love that part that they sit down and they just kind of raw, authentically talk about whatever is going on in the day. It's not perfect. It's not the perfect lighting. It's not perfect angles. It's just you sit there and you talk about whatever is on your mind, whatever you saw in the days leading up to sitting in front of the camera and discussing, in hopes of recording that content, in hopes for a better future or impacting a better future with whatever knowledge and information you are bringing to the recordings and the logs. And my goal is the same in a sense, although it may be me trying to make something out of nothing, you could say, or add meaning to my life. And if you have to add meaning to your life in strange, illogical ways that don't make sense to everyone, I don't think that matters. I think it's more important that you get the meaning and build the story, build the character arc, however you need to do it. So my version of that is sitting here, and day after day, I will do these logs, and I hope to have an accumulation of years of video and information that you can track the patterns of mania, depression, track the patterns of the mental health diagnosis, the mental health symptoms that I have, and be able to, in the future, use some sort of AI technology, go through the library of content, and then be able to better track the triggers, the speech pathology, the hand movements, the emphasis on words, whatever it is, and be able to notice certain patterns better using the AI to go through the content that I have recorded and provided. So in so doing, the soul logs, there will be times that I'm a lot more enthusiastic. I express things better. I articulate things better. And there will be times that they may be the more depressive, what do they call it? What did Winston Churchill call it? The sad dog days? The days of the something to do with the dog, Winston Churchill called it. I shouldn't be butchering the quotes of people I'm going to reference, but essentially I want to be some sort of a guinea pig in a sense, but not the guinea pig to a system that makes me feel like someone being poked and prodded by the system, being poked and prodded by the people in the white lab coats, and feeling like the guinea pig in the system. I want to provide information and provide wisdom and provide feedback and help to people similar to me and people of the future in any way I can, but do it in my own way that I enjoy and I think is cool. So this is kind of my form of doing that. It is the soul logs, and the library and the live streaming and the content creation, as well as interviewing other people in the world of mental health. So from this point going forward, it will be capturing video, and then essentially at some point I'll take AI technology to track the recordings. Similar, and I got this idea from, I believe it was King George III of England, that he was going through his own problems, and the doctors of that time built like life charts. They built a life chart essentially, and they tried to track his, and he was the Mad King. He is the nickname the Mad King, the moniker. But essentially over time they built a life chart of significant moments in his life, significant things happening in the world, and this is how they tracked some of his episodes, some of his heightened episodes, his down, depressive episodes. And with that idea of tracking the life chart, this is essentially my own version and my own form of tracking the life chart in the new age, in our new age of technology. Because people with mental health, people with mental illnesses will always be subject to kind of being test dummies, being lab rats to the system of health and psychiatry. They'll always be extracting information from us. They'll always be extracting the symptoms, the pathology, building new pathology, new diagnoses, new medications for emotions, for human actions, human emotions. But I would rather not feel like the guinea pig of the system. I would rather provide and help in any way I can to my kin, to the system still, in a sense, but do it in my own creative way, which is the soul logs. So that's kind of my mission with sitting and doing these recordings. Do I have any other missions or goals with these recordings? I guess I can kind of talk about where I'm at currently with this first one, which is maybe that would be helpful. I don't know if I should rock the hoodie up, peep the hair. I hope my mic is picking this up good. I think this is a nice little spot I got, nice little backdrop. But essentially where I'm at right now, I am 25 years old. I live in Canada. What else do I got? I'm thinking about where I want to take this, but I think you gotta speak and let the tide take you wherever it goes. Cast the sail and let the waves take you where they take you. Essentially, I would say I am in a state of mania currently. I have a lot of the same symptoms that mania provide. I don't like to classify the symptoms or say that I'm manic. I don't like to agree to the diagnoses and diagnostics in the terms that they give. I think it gives more power to them in a sense. So whenever I talk about things and kind of express what's going on, I will veer the line and toe the line of the terminology. So bear with me. But essentially I'm having a state of mania going on, and it's been ongoing for probably 4 or 5 months, and that consists of sleeping, being very altered, not being on a consistent sleeping routine. I will go from being awake all night to then sleeping in the day, and then sleeping at night, being awake in the day. It will go from being awake for 24 to 30 hours, and then sleeping for 12 hours, being awake for another 24 hours, then sleeping for 8 hours, and then being awake for 12 hours, and then sleeping for 8 hours. So there's really no consistency at all to when I'm sleeping, when I'm awake. And I think that is obviously a huge factor in how the stability and the baseline of how I interact with the world. The sleeping is a huge portion of it. So there's that going on currently. Also, a symptom of kind of the current state is usually with these mania-like symptoms and feelings, you can feel it in your eyes. You can literally feel it, and usually you can see it in the eyes. There's kind of, it's more of like a glossy, sometimes like a reddish, but like a glossed over look in the eye. But I can actually feel it. You can feel it in your eyes. Not a tired feeling. It's almost similar to feeling tired. How your eyes are heavy, or I don't have allergies, so I don't know if I can relate it to allergies, but there's a feeling in the eyes that's different. So that's currently going on. In a lot of ways, I'm more expressive. I'm better at speaking. I'm more articulate. I'm a better orator. The emphasis is a lot stronger. So usually when these heightened states or elevated states are happening, I'm better at speaking. I'm better at communicating. And not only am I better at communicating, there's a lack of fear when it comes to communicating. Almost when the mania symptoms arise, the filter that filters kind of what you'll say out loud, some of the things you'll do, some of your insecurities or anxieties will start to dissipate and dwindle. So you're much more likely to say things that you wouldn't normally say, or do things that you wouldn't normally do. So the impulsivity increases, but the fear and anxieties as well go away. So in the last little while, I've been essentially wanting to, and I might steer off course in what I'm talking about. It might not be the most point to point of what's going on in the world. That's also part of the symptoms sometimes as you jump around. And I realize that this, like sitting in the dark in front of like a question mark doing this whole thing doesn't help the whole vibe, especially with what I'm describing. I would say I am self-aware to a certain extent of the portrayal, but in the last, sorry, I was listening to see if someone was coming down. In the last little while, I would say over the last year in my life, I'm embarking on a new journey of stepping into something new, stepping into a new life, essentially, which is admitting to myself that I can't live in the regular world of doing a regular job, a regular 9 to 5, doing something that doesn't bring me fulfillment in life, that doesn't have any purpose or meaning. I've recognized through the last 7 years of being in and out of hospital, being in and out of work, on and off of work, that the more that I spend time in a job that doesn't really have meaning, doesn't really provide a real passion for life, a meaning for life, and it's just a job for the sake of a job, I end up building this internal turmoil, and it ends up combusting and imploding. That's my brain and my psyche and my consciousness, everything just explodes, and I essentially lose my wherewithal, I lose my mind, and things go astray. So in learning that, it's kind of coming to the point that either I continue going back into a life of mediocrity and kind of doing nothing and getting a job just for the sake of a job and the sake of some of that security, or going out on a limb and taking a leap of faith, jumping into the abyss. And I say, this is the way I like to say for myself, taking the stage. Really taking the stage, walking through the curtain, because once you take the stage, there's no going back. And in the process of taking the stage, that's a time of nervousness, that's a time of anxiety, that's a time of unease, uncertainty, because essentially you don't know what your life will look like. Nor do any of us know what our life will look like, but not having a job, or truly not knowing what your future or the next few months or the next years will look like in your life can provide a lot of uncertainty. So that uncertainty, but me knowing that I have to do this, me knowing that I have to jump into the abyss right now, it can be scary, it can be daunting, but I don't think there's any other option. I think that's kind of the path I have to go towards, and that's exciting. That part of it, and learning and figuring that out, and committing to that path, that is exciting. But deciding to commit to that path and committing to that path and taking the leap of faith, I've been using the elevated state, essentially, and using the mania-like feelings, that the things that come with it, the lack of fear, the overabundance of confidence, the lack of anxieties, the filter that allows more expression, more vulnerability, the freedom to express maybe some of your ideas, more of your thoughts, more of your passions more freely. I've been kind of using that undercurrent of those symptoms and that elevated state to propel me into taking the stage and propel me into sort of a new life and a new journey. So although it could be dangerous to play with some of that, it could be very dangerous. This is not a recommendation for anyone. This is just kind of how I look at it, and kind of how I contextualize, how I kind of conceptualize what is going on. But it is using that confidence, using that lack of fear, lack of anxiety to transition into the new life. So, because in my mind, it's once I've posted enough videos, once I've said enough things, once I've told enough stories about kind of what's going on in my life, or how I think about the world, I look at it as like there's no going back. So it's getting over that hump of no return, and then it's whatever happens. You're in the clear, you're set, and you're in your new life. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about things and what's been going on. But in terms of kind of getting things in order, I would say it is incredibly important to get sleep stabilized, which I will be doing currently. But you also in these elevated states, you become obsessive with certain topics to the point that it's all you think about. So, for example, I would say for the past 8 or 9 months, all I can think about is it's kind of like politically religious based, and kind of like the constructs of how the world works, in a sense, is kind of how I would describe it. But I think it gets emphasized and amplified even more the more time you spend, or the more time I spend on the internet, the more time I spend on these apps that just amplify this kind of battleground of ideologies, the battleground of religion, the battleground of race, all of these different things. So the more time I spend online, it kind of just exacerbates this type of thinking and brewing and ruminating in these thoughts. So this obsessive thinking about these topics has been going on for a long time, and it's all day, every day. Like from the time I wake up, in the shower, there's not like or even in conversation, talking to anyone, this is what I want to talk about. There's no room for other things. So that's an interesting thing that kind of goes on. Do I think all of this is negativity, or all of this is a bad negative thing? No, I don't. Do I think there can be some cause for concern? Sure. To watch out for some of these things? Sure. But to demonize all of it and pathologize all of it, I think is the wrong approach to some of these natural human experiences and naturally occurring. That was a couple bad sentences there. Naturally occurring emotions that happen in humans. So to demonize and pathologize all of those things, I think is a net negative in the world. And I think we kind of need to steer away from that type of thinking and that type of process in how we deal with some of these mental illnesses and mental health situations. But outside of that, so this first soul log one is obviously, it's going to be a little longer because it's the first one, and I just kind of want to get some things out of the way, I guess. But besides that, I'm kind of at a point in life where I've decided that I may be lost for some time. I may be lost in the woods, lost in the wilderness of not fully knowing what the future looks like, or not fully knowing what my path looks like, but coming and recognizing that that's okay, that that's kind of part of the fun, that's part of the journey of life, is to not know what tomorrow may bring. Like, what's the saying? Yesterday's history. Today's a mystery. It's all about what you do tomorrow. Is that what the saying is? Yesterday's history, today's a mystery. It's all about what you do tomorrow, I think is the saying. But yeah, so we are in a state of mystery currently. Do I have anything else for soul log number one? I don't know. Do I think it's a cool idea that to kind of reenact theater and reenact some of my favorite movies in my own way, of recording like Jake Sully in Avatar, recording like Mark Watney in Martian, and then hopefully in the future when I have the content library, tracking the ups and downs, tracking different emotional levels, different there'll be a whole different variety of things I'll be able to track, because I'll have me sitting and talking about what's going on in day-to-day life. But currently I'm not, I guess I'll provide more context of what day-to-day life looks like from a starting position. Currently on disability leave from my job due to some mental health problems, as I'm expressing currently. And I think something that is unique, or something that is fascinating, is although mental health or some of these issues arise with me, I'm able to articulate it, I would say, fairly well, and express what's going on fairly well, to a point that it's been problematic with doctors, because I've gone in to my doctor in the past, and this isn't the doctor I currently have now, but I've gone into my doctor in the past and said, like, hey, some big concerns of mine are going on, this is what's happening, this is what I think is happening, and I tell them, and I articulate it to them, and we don't really change anything, nothing really happens, because I think there's a lapse in judgment in how big of the concern it may be to them, or how significant that what's going on with me is, that we don't do anything, the doctor doesn't really do anything, and then within weeks or within a month I end up in the hospital in a very severe episode of mania and psychosis, or a psychotic break, because that potentially could have been prevented if we took action earlier. So that has been a problem in the past. And I think it's due to me coming across how I come across when I speak about some of this stuff. Maybe me even speaking like this, you couldn't tell. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But it's also, I train myself. I train myself, and I am cognizant of how I come across, not only in times of elevated states, but kind of all the time. There's kind of like this voice, not like a schizophrenic voice or anything, but there's kind of always this reminder that beware of how you come across, because of the label that comes with some of these diagnoses and the label that I've been given. A lot of negative connotation comes with it. A lot of being labeled as crazy, being labeled as a lunatic, and all of the baggage that comes with the stories, the movie representation, the TV show representation, the insane asylum stories that come with these diagnoses. That's how you act in the world, and how I act in the world. I kind of am cognizant of everything I do, because I don't want to be looked at as crazy or be considered as someone who acts in a certain way because of all of this history. So with that in mind, that also applies to when some of these states, manic-like states, are happening. So it's like I'm coaching myself, and throughout the 7 years that I've been dealing with some of this stuff now, I coach myself to be, it's essentially like, how do I look like from the lens of someone else? How am I perceived in conversation? How are my actions perceived by those around me? That can they detect? Can they see? And is that to say that I'm acting at all times? No, but I think there's a level that I try to cover up some of the things that are happening. Or it's like someone who it's like, an example I could give is like someone who has all this energy and all they want to do is sing and dance, and all day they're out and about in the normal world, and they just want to sing so loud, they want to dance so freely, like nobody's watching, but they have this thought that they may be looked at in a weird way, so they don't. But the second they get home into their bedroom when no one's watching, they sing and dance so freely. So it's kind of like that, in a sense, in a weird way. I don't know if that's a great description of it, but I try to be not weary, but I try to be cognizant of how I may be perceived at all times, and that applies to times of being sick as well, which may be detrimental to myself. Now that I talk about it and say it out loud, yeah, it's definitely detrimental to myself, instead of probably just being open and free. But I think the ability to be able to express it at the same time is helpful to a certain extent. So I have both, a detriment and the ability to express. So there's good and bad. There's good and bad. But is there anything else? So I'm currently off of work. I guess you could say, in terms of health standards, for my own personal health standards, I am very out of shape. I am overweight. I would like to kind of get that dialed in a bit. But there's part of me that is fearful to work out and kind of like ignite the ego, essentially, kind of ignite that will of fire to want to become a conqueror, become someone who is unstoppable and unbreakable, because once that begins, it can kind of snowball into something. But besides that, I guess I'll wrap this up and say that's kind of what's going on right now, and that is soul number 1. So we'll be doing these every day.